Corepunk is an upcoming MMORPG that looks and plays exactly like a MOBA. Like, seriously, look at this footage. If you told me this was a League of Legends spin-off, I would totally believe you. But, the big difference is that Corepunk is also a fully fleshed out MMORPG, which means things like it's got a big seamless open world. We'll be exploring zones of various biomes with like forest and deserts, and in those zones we'll find all sorts of different types of enemies, camps, ruins, caves, and strongholds, along with small villages with NPCs or large cities filled with a ton of other characters and real players. They've also really emphasized this game's fog of war mechanic that's meant to incentivize exploration and discovery. So as you move through areas, you'll lift the fog and discover things like chests filled with loot, rare monsters, wandering merchants with special items, even unique location-based events, and all sorts of other stuff that's only discoverable by exploring. You'll be doing the expected questing and leveling, grinding for loot and gearing up. There will be multiple heroes to choose from, and each of them have 3 different masteries, which are basically specializations with their own corresponding set of skills. There's going to be group PvE content via dungeons, both handcrafted and procedurally generated, as well as raids for larger scale group challenges. PvP ranges from open world, where you can use that fog of war to sneak up on other players, to more structured fighting in things like arenas and battlegrounds. And there'll be some other traditional MMO systems like crafting and gathering, farming, pack deliveries, epic quest lines, a guild system, and more. And all of this, once again, from this top-down perspective with MOBA-like mechanics. Moving your character, interacting with objects, and attacking enemies is all done by clicking on things with your mouse. Now, my last Corepunk video came out in January of this year, and that was quite a long time ago. Since then, we've got a variety of new updates for the game. We got a closer look at hero customization, over 15 minutes of new PvE gameplay. This was the killer here and really showcased the game's target difficulty. I loved what we saw. And then we also got some details on how development is going along, as well as when we can expect to finally get our hands on the game. And that's what I'll be covering in today's video. I want to go over all of the new information about Corepunk since my last video. Before we jump into the details though, let's get a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Tales of Luminaria, a new episodic anime RPG for mobile devices. The game is set in the Tales universe and features 21 protagonists, each with their own distinct storyline you can play through. It uses an episodic model structured like an anime that seamlessly combines storytelling with combat. You've got basic attacks, techniques, and super abilities, which can all be activated by tapping and flicking. The visuals combine the over-the-top anime styles with cel-shaded graphics, and you'll have a world to explore, checking out numerous locations and biomes in the Tales universe, traveling on foot, talking with NPCs, and fighting off enemies. If you like anime action set in a fantasy world, have played prior Tales games, or are just looking for a new 3D action RPG to play on your phone, you may like Tales of Luminaria. And if you're interested, go ahead and check out the game using the link in the description below. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into and cover all of this new Corepunk information. I'm super excited here. So first, starting things off, at the end of April, we got this developer update video. In it, they said that the team was making good progress while simultaneously trying to make sure to not overwork themselves. They weren't doing overtime, they weren't crunching, as they wanted to make sure that everyone on the team is happy and healthy. And I'm glad to hear it. I think it's the best way to approach work personally. Keeping a good work-life balance also means higher quality of working time in my experience. So it's a win-win-win across the board. Now, one big question that they mentioned that they kept on getting was, when would the beta begin? Now, at the point of that video, we were expecting a playable version of Corepunk to be ready in the first half of the year. Well, no such beta happened, because in that video, they announced that it would be delayed. The reason being the aforementioned lack of crunch, combined with them really wanting to leave a good first impression, because after all, you only get one of those. And even though this is going to be a beta, they want people to come away feeling like it's a complete game. Not buggy, not lacking in content, or missing any major features. So that planned early 2021 beta was being pushed back into August, which they said would still line up with their plans for a full launch of Corepunk in December. That was until August rolled around, when they announced yet another delay. We got another video. It was super short. They cut straight to the chase and simply said they were not on schedule due to technical issues, among other things. So that August beta wasn't going to happen. The new planned beta date would be for this December. Now, of course, that means that the target launch of the game in December clearly isn't going to happen, but hey, a beta sounds good as well. Keep that lack of crunch and good work-life balance going by all means. Now, in the meantime, they said we would be getting a few gameplay and features videos, along with a live stream closer to December, going over all of the content that will be available in the beta, and since then, they have delivered. So the very first in-depth video we got was this hero customization, and this gave us a good look at some of the visual options for our characters in the game. First, you pick from one of the 6 available heroes. They started out with this champion. Now from there, you've got options for an outfit, face, hairstyle, and facial features, along with some skin, hair, lip, and eye color choices. They have some presets to select from, as well as an option to just randomize from all available combinations, and this was all pretty standard fare. It seems like it was decent enough variety for a top-down game. You know, you're not exactly getting much up-close time with your character's face or hair while playing, so I'm more than happy with what they were showing here in terms of the amount of customization. However, one big thing you may notice is the lack of option for picking your character's race. This is mainly due to the game being structured around heroes and not classes. You're not picking a warrior class and then choosing from the game's variety of fantasy races. No, you're picking a unique hero, like the champion, which is more akin to a MOBA character. Now from there, you do have a few visual options to tinker with, everything we just showed, but nothing too substantial, and then you have the choice of picking male or female. Initially, this was kind of a bummer for me. I really love the more traditional MMO class system where you pick a class and then you pick the race, and maybe the races have different perks and stuff, but that's just not the decision they made with this game. I have come to terms with the idea begrudgingly. It's fine though. Besides the customization, it was cool to see in this video a closer look at some of the heroes in Corepunk. They showed a variety of different appearances for the champion, bomber, and warmonger heroes, and I really liked what I saw. Like, I think all of this looks great, from the characters themselves to their weapons and armor. The overall visual style reminds me quite a bit of WildStar, actually, but obviously I hope this game doesn't have the same fate as WildStar. Anyway, I think it all looks good, and it's likely to age well if the game sticks around. Now, the next video though was the big one. This is 17 minutes of group PvE combat. It shows a party of 4 taking on various open world encounters against groups of enemies, and there were a ton of interesting takeaways from this video. First of all, the game looks very difficult. Engaging with the first few packs was clearly no cakewalk for this group of players. The enemies, which looked to be normal mobs at the very same level as the player characters, provided a real challenge. They would split up and spread out to avoid being easily crowd controlled. They dealt quite a lot of damage to the players, and it also appears there was a threat system to manage, as the healer of the group was continuously targeted. In fact, in the third engagement of the video, the healer was taken out. Now at that point, we saw the group make use of this campfire. They placed it down, which allowed them to rest, increasing their health regeneration. The healer also resurrected at this point. I'm not sure if that was because of the campfire or if the timer just finished counting down. Regardless, I do love resting mechanics like this campfire. I think it's pretty cool thematically and in terms of a game system. We then saw this Dice of Fate artifact from the main character's perspective. So these are basically abilities you can use in this game for your heroes. Artifacts, think again, kind of like MOBA items, for example. They just provide further options to your character's base skill set. This particular one increased max health and armor and had this 30-second cooldown. So after the group was fully rested, they made their way out for another fight. They engaged a much larger pack of enemies from anything we'd seen so far, and in this fight, they got totally demolished. It's pretty clear at this point that healing is going to be hard to come by, and fights are tough. This is really going to force players to be more careful about taking damage, as well as trying to coordinate CC and work with the support characters in their group to stay alive, and I love it. I would say in nearly every single MMO, the PvE encounters while leveling up are a joke. You can basically be AFK while you play, but it seems like that is not going to be the case here in Corepunk. We're looking at level 10 gameplay, and this group is getting obliterated time after time again. It really is a nice change of pace from what I'm used to seeing. I think as long as the fights are still winnable when you engage properly, I will appreciate the challenge. So after they wipe here, they then cut to the group resting once again. Here, the player whose perspective we're watching from changes their gear. Although this is interesting because you may assume that this was like a response to them wiping, right? But no, gear in the game has no stat values. It's all just cosmetic. Alteration of your character comes via your weapon, attribute points, the skill trees in the game, as well as those artifacts like we mentioned earlier. So the changing of gear here seems kind of strange. I guess it's neat to see a different outfit, but don't think he was like putting on better gear for the fights, because that's not what happened. The following engagement goes much better for the group. Only 2 of them died in this one. And I just love also seeing all of the crowd control at play here. There's a bunch of stuns and roots and pushes. However, watching all of this play out really makes me not want to roll as a healer because this looks kind of rough, dude. Also, I want to say here, early on when we first saw footage of the game, there was a lot of vocal concern about the overall speed from the character's movement to combat, attacks, and spells. People, myself included, thought it all looked just a tad too slow. But after seeing it in action here in a group setting against large groups of enemies, I actually think it's good. As we've seen, the AI are clearly no pushover and will force us to be strategic. So an overall slower pace of combat, I think, plays well into that. We're gonna have to focus more on our positioning and properly timing our attacks as well as our skills. This group setting does appear to be how the game is kind of meant to be played. I hate that phrasing normally, but it does seem that way. Now, I'm not sure what that's gonna mean for how combat will feel as a solo player, leveling up against smaller packs or against individual enemies. Combat might feel slow and clunky if you're only taking on one enemy at a time, but clearly in the group setting, you need that slower pace of combat to just not get smashed because you will die so quickly. We will have to wait and see, but yeah, in general, seeing this in action, I no longer feel like combat is too slow. It seems like it's just right given the rest of the circumstances. Now, the video goes on for the following, 7 or 8 minutes, showing quite a few more group encounters. They don't really mix it up. It's just more of the same. Our party of players having varying degrees of success. A couple of interesting notes though from the rest of the footage. At one point, we do get a look at this ping system where the player marks on the ground for an assist. We see that the quick radial menu they pull up also has a few other options with an exclamation, an eye, and a footprint. We also get to see some of the weather effects in action as a rainstorm rolls in at one point. And then finally, at the very end of the video, the group finds this chest, they open it, and a bunch of loot pops out. Now, what's really interesting here though is that it does appear like the loot is instanced. So the main player, that we see their perspective, they pick up every single piece of gear that drops on the screen. And now I recall though that other players will see their own gear, and you can see how these players are moving around the chest. It does seem like what they're doing is picking up gear that is instanced for them. So just realize, I believe that is a system in the game. And that pretty much does it for this gameplay video. Like I said, it was like 16 or 17 minutes total gameplay. And I gotta say though, I'm just super happy with what we're seeing here. The character customization video was cool and all, but specifically this group PvE gameplay video is exactly what I've been waiting for. Seeing these extended bits of combat, getting a good look at how team play works with the CC and the healing and the positioning, and just realizing how much of a challenge the game is aiming to deliver. I mean, this seems like it could be like an end game dungeon or something, but no, this is level 10 group gameplay and appears to be in the open world as well, because from what I saw, dungeons in this game look like dungeons. This was open world gameplay as far as I'm aware. After seeing this, I am just more interested and pumped to play than I have been ever before. This again is exactly the kind of content I was waiting for. Now, as far as I've seen, I've checked all of their socials and the website, and everything. It does appear like they are still on track for a December beta test, and at this point, I can't wait to play. It really looks great. I've always kind of wondered how a MOBA style gameplay would fit into the MMO framework, you know, with towns of other players and with various zones and biomes and with things like dungeons and PvP encounters. And that's the other thing, I'm really interested to see what the open world PvP, but also the instance PvP with the battlegrounds and the arenas. I want to see more of that. I can't wait to not only see more of this game, but also get to play the game myself. I will say, however, that I am really still trying to temper my expectations. After all, this isn't some massive AAA studio making the game, so I have to really try to keep that in mind and rein in my expectations. However, despite that, everything that they've shown of this game looks fantastic. It looks like it could be a lot of fun. I suspect that this gameplay style, not only just the top-down perspective, but also the MOBA-like mechanics where you're clicking around everywhere, you're not doing WASD. It's a clicking game with some keybinds for your abilities. I don't think that's going to be everyone's cup of tea, but also at the same time, MOBAs are pretty darn popular, and MMOs have quite a following as well. So you combine those two games, I think you could have something on your hands. There's a lot of big questions about longevity, what's the leveling experience like, what's the end game content like. As we've seen with New World, that's obviously a key point. Also, as we've seen with New World, hopefully the game doesn't launch a complete buggy mess. I'm not trying to rag on New World here. That's not the point of the video. Corepunk looks really cool. I'm super happy with what we've seen, and I can't wait because we're just less than 2 months away from presumably getting to play the game as long as they hit this December target beta. Please don't have another delay. I mean, make the game as good as it is and don't burn yourselves out. That's more important. But yeah, anyways, that is the most recent update on Corepunk. It's looking great. I'm pretty stoked for this game, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it turns out well. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoy the content, and I'll see you in the next one.